February 19th. My name is Crypto Ramaru, joined as always by Nick the Crypto Hitman. And boy, are we feeling the bottom of the bear market. Hopefully the bottom anyway. Sentiment is cooked. I saw that searches for Bitcoin go to zero is back, close to all-time highs again, which is just ridiculous. But we have a slew of stories, guys, that are going to make you feel good, going to make you feel bullish, going to make you think about the long-term potential of this asset class. Perhaps the most important story and the title of today's live stream, the ultimate signal, which indicates alt season may be breaking out here, has just been triggered. That's not nothing. That's not nothing. UAE's buying Bitcoin. ETH is being scooped up voraciously at these levels. Bitmine and others are doing their job, and yet retail continues to capitulate and be bearish. All right, let's do a sentiment check. Let's do a emotions check on Nick. How are you faring emotionally at this moment in time?
I think emotionally fine because it's just been a long, drawn-out downturn. We don't have massive capitulation right now. We don't have a big run-up. It's more par for the course. It kind of sucks because we keep looking, and more bullish macros keep popping up. The outcome or the outlook for the Fed, now there is going to be a new Fed chair in May. There's going to be more interest rate cuts. Inflation is down. The Clarity Act jumped from 60% to 90% chance of passing. We never wavered off that. You have all these things coming, tariff rebate checks. We're going to have massive tax returns coming in the next couple months. And yet, crypto, Bitcoin, Ethereum, barely holding higher lows after the capitulation we saw just a week ago. And it's like, where is the liquidity going to come from? Where are the buyers going to come from? Because all the institutions are buying. Ethereum is being bought up by Thomas Lee and Joe Lubin. You got Bitcoin being scooped up, and that price keeps going down. How do we get retail excited? And I guess that's the emotional strain is retail gets excited for what they see in opportunity, what their friends are making money on. And right now they're doing that on sports cards, Pokemon cards. A month ago it was gold and silver. And they haven't waned off of that yet. They're probably buying more now on this dip because this is the first dip. But for Bitcoin and Ethereum, after Bitcoin went to an all-time high and yet about a year of bullishness for Bitcoin, altcoins had very limited bullishness and very limited chances of making money, which means that retail never got into the markets. You need not for markets and money to be easy, but you need the perception of easy gains to be there in order to manipulate FOMO from retail investors. And I just don't know when or how that's going to happen.
Green candles. The only way retail really ever makes a comeback is sustained multiple months of green. And we've had the opposite. We've had sustained
I think it's five red. I think it's five
months of red. I think we might be at the longest downtrend, or at least tied for the longest downtrend in terms of consecutive red months than we've ever had in Bitcoin's history. Which is mind-boggling given all the favorable macro setups and the macro situation from the political side. You mentioned the Fed. All this stuff. I think the big headwind, and there's many headwinds right now. You can talk about institutions who may be suppressing the price to buy lower, lack of retail. You can talk about a lot of those things. But right now, we have a situation with Iran and whether we are going to do another strike, which is causing more fear, more uncertainty, driving up the price of oil, driving up the value of the dollar. All of these things. Bad for risk assets. And so let's just pray that the powers that be can either negotiate some kind of settlement or they just back off. I don't really know anyone, conservative, liberal, hawk, dove, who wants to do another strike on Iran right now. Didn't we already decimate their nuclear capabilities? So what is this even about at this point? Can someone explain it to me?
Yeah, I have no idea. I have not kept up with the Iranian conflicts. Always something going on there. Do you see the Iranian Twitter posts that are quite threatening to Americans with people here on our land, but also threatening from outside sources? So, who is that? I don't know. It says it's their official government accounts. That's probably not a good thing when it comes to poking the bear because Trump doesn't like to get poked and he doesn't like threats of terrorist attacks on our soil or abroad. So that's probably maybe one of the things that's indicative of what's going on in Iran. That's never a good look. You know, you want freedom of speech, and well, there you go on X. You got world leaders and world governments poking and threatening terrorist attacks on American soil. Never a good look. And then we've seen that here with the uncertainty in the markets. NASDAQ is down. Remember, when we were up here, I said downside magnet is this red line, the longer-term moving average. That's where we're sitting right here. Now, can we hold this red line? And then the worst case scenario is you need to hold this capitulation low that we saw back in November, and that would be around 24,000 on the NASDAQ. Currently, we're at 24,750, down 0.5% on the day. How it is affecting crypto? Well, you can assume not very good. Ethereum down 1% on the day, but still holding higher lows after the capitulation we saw back on Friday 6th. We would love for this to be a major low and start to convert. We thought this was a major low up here. We converted for 3 months, grinding higher lows, and going up as high as like $4,000 Ethereum. And then again, new black swan, Greenland, whatever it was at the time. And now we sit here right now. Bitcoin, same thing, 66,281, holding these prior lows here. And you really want to hold the capitulation lows on the same exact date, February 6th. So nothing exciting to talk about when the blue chips, Bitcoin, Ethereum, BNB, and Solana charts all looking the same, all looking ugly. In the face of what was all-time highs across all stock indices, all-time highs for gold and silver, yes, Bitcoin and Ethereum caught bids. You know, Bitcoin was as high as $98,000 a month ago when everything was at all-time highs. But when those have sold off, remember, silver has fallen from $126 an ounce to $75 an ounce. Bitcoin and Ethereum have fallen off as well. Of course, you can imagine what that does to all your altcoins. Dries up liquidity. Maybe they're not down as much, but there's not very much volume. You're not getting new holders, and there's no liquidity going into those assets to spur that FOMO, to spur that interest, or to spur that speculation.
Tough moment across the board, no doubt about it. Does remind me a bit of early 2020. We've talked about this in the past. 2019 is when the Fed at that time stopped QT. They stopped tightening at the end of 2019. But the market actually did not rebound. In fact, I think it continued to bleed out further, down to sub like $10,000 Bitcoin. I don't know if you guys remember those days. Even well into Q1 of 2020. And then that culminated, that capitulation event, which I think was a more meaningful capitulation event in March, was the COVID capitulation. When Bitcoin flash crashed by 50%, I believe, to, what was it, $4,000, $3,000, from like $6,000. I don't even remember the numbers. I bought that dip. But I'm getting 2020, I'm getting 2019, 2020 vibes. QT ended, right, at the end of 2024. Market still kind of continued to bleed out. We had a capitulation event. I would argue that we just had one, right? That huge drop from 90 to where we're at now. And hopefully we can now begin the slow grind back up. And if it does repeat, you know, the rest of 2020, well, then we really truly are pre-rich as fuck.
Yeah, we talk about this. Here's another example of that. Max Pain Zone just triggered by Crypto Russ. We're not going to read all of this, but you know, yes, liquidity shocks always matter. We talk about liquidity, how it's important for risk on assets, but historically, buying these sharp extremes has been one of the highest conviction setups in Bitcoin's playbook. Doesn't feel good. That's usually the point. You can look here at these sharp ratios on the short term here. In 2015, it marked a bottom. Look, it's in all the way down here to the blue. So oversold, that is turning purple. That was the bottom in 2019 when I mortgaged my house. 2022 to 2023, we see that happen twice here. It was right at this low and right at this low before the big run that we've seen with the Bitcoin ETF and everything else that's been going on, Trump, etc., etc. And then now we see it here early 2026 after QE is over. Interest rates have begun to be cut. We got liquidity coming back to the market. We got ISM starting to tick up. You got the sharp ratio below 40 at the lowest it's been since when? all of these other bear market lows. So although this hasn't really felt like the extended bear market, the winter here, and we've only gone down, 40 to 50% rather than 85%, we're still seeing major oversold readings on the Sharpe ratio. You also see the ISM starting to tick up, which leads you to believe that, hey, if this was a bear market, the true Bitcoin winter, we had yet another Bitcoin winter that had what? Less aggressive downside moves. And what is going to happen? We're going to have a shorter time frame of bear market, and then we're going to head towards all-time highs. And we'll probably have less gains than we saw over this time period. Maybe we go from here to 200,000 or 180,000, but we will go to all-time highs. And now is the time to be about loading up on your Bitcoin, staying convicted on your Ethereum, and not jeeting out your altcoins for dust that you believe in, because the market is about to heat up again.
The reduced volatility and the shorter bull trends and the shorter bear trends is consistent with our thesis that when Wall Street and the ETF buyers entered the market, that volatility would decrease and that the market would fundamentally change. We would no longer get 85% drawdowns. We would get near 50% drawdowns. And, my guess is in 3 years, 5 years, Bitcoin will look even more similar to the stock market where, a 1 or 2% move on a day is actually notable. We'll get to that point. We'll get even more reduced volatility. We're not there yet, but it will happen. So, look, it's not fun. Should we have sold the top? Yes. Did we sell the top? No, at least not me, because I never sell because I'm a maniac, at least on my Bitcoin. And now it's the waiting game, guys. It's the waiting game to see when the Fed's going to step in with some further intervention. ISM ticks up further. Clarity Act gets passed. Hopefully no war in Iran. That's a big one. Let's get that thing finished, man. No reason to be doing that right now, from my estimation, anyway.
AJ West says, good morning. We got Wyckoff Stock Market Institute saying smash the like, share, and subscribe buttons. We got Miko Chapo in the house. Good morning, guys. Ian, you wanted to post GM. Look at that old picture. You're looking so youthful in there. Martin Max King says hello. And Moonmut, good morning, everyone. Moonmut's still in here rocking the Pulse Chain PFP with Pulse Chain, Pulse X, and Hex on there. So shout out to you. Still doing your thing over there. Richard Hart isn't all that active, but he is active. ProveX is launched, and let's see what happens as more Pulse and PulseX continue to get bought and burnt. We see PTGC buying and burning itself, and we see Surf buying and burning itself. We just need the better market to come so altcoins can actually get some liquidity. And talking about where does liquidity come from, tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern time, we have yet another meeting that's focusing on stablecoins, crypto, and this leads to the Clarity Act. This time, banks will actually be in attendance. Banks are the ones slowing this down. Banks suck. Banks are the reason we're in crypto to begin with. Can banks rub elbows with the crypto giants such as Coinbase? I saw CZ was with Trump Jr. as well. So what is going to happen here? Can we finally get some clarity, pun intended, for the Clarity Act to get passed?
I've been following the Clarity Act progress more closely now that I'm back from my vacation. And it is becoming more and more apparent to me that it will, in fact, get passed. The parties are coming together. They're now all seemingly talking about a win for the banks, whatever that means, win for the crypto industry, and win for the American people. This bill will get passed. It is a major priority of the Trump administration. It's a major priority of the Republicans, and there are even some Democrats who are behind it, believe it or not. And so it's going to get passed. The only issue, well, you could call it an issue, or you could say is what it is. The new timeline that I've heard from one of the leading senators who's been a part of the negotiations, Senator Bernie Moreno, the new timeline is April.
That's not what I want. I want end of March.
Yeah. So pre-rich for a little bit longer, folks. Pre-rich for a little bit longer. But look at that, 90% chance.
Well, it's crazy. It's crazy that this back in January it was like at 40%, and it doesn't say by Q1. It says in 2026. And if you don't have Clarity Act passed and signed into law in 2026, that would kind of be a complete and utter failure, considering all inclination was is they were trying to do this in Q1 2026 before all the other stuff they got to worry about happens. And this is just gets passed into law in 2026 at any point. But yes, it did just jump from 60% to 90% after this recent meetings, recent comments, and the announcement of yet another meeting today that happens right now as we speak. They're probably talking, and hopefully JP Morgan and the banks will shove it up their ass and get some things going and just sign the documentation. Because remember, we work in a country that isn't supposed to allow monopolies, yet the banking system has kind of had a monopoly on the financial system for decades now. We've been slowly seeing that fade away with the launch of Robinhood and Cash App and PayPal and Venmo and some of these other banking non-banker apps. And it's nice to see that we continue to trend in that direction with blockchain technology, hopefully with stablecoin regulation and the Clarity Act coming into play here in 2026.
Yeah, they'll come to terms on the stablecoin issue. My guess is there'll be some limitations around that from the standpoint of whether average, everyday, consumers can earn interest on that. Or maybe the banks will say, hey, we're getting behind that and we're doing that now. We're offering the same shit because we're doing JP Morgan stablecoin, and so go come over and use ours. I don't know. It'll get resolved. And then, here's a prediction, right? It'll get passed. We'll probably start to see a run up in advance of it getting passed once it gets leaked, essentially, that this thing's getting passed. And it kind of hits the newsreels and the media that this thing's getting passed. You'll start to see a run up and a major recovery. But like anything, buy the rumor, sell the news. We may see a sell-off once the thing gets passed. And I think it is going to take some time for the alleged trillions of dollars, which are supposedly looking to come into crypto after the Clarity Act. It's going to take some time for that money to flow in. So I don't think we teleport from 60 to 120 the week after the Clarity Act's passed. I don't know your prediction there, Nick, but it's probably more reasonable.
No, I think it's going to take some time. I do think, at these prices, you can have big run-ups in dollar amounts pretty rapidly. Remember, after the massive capitulation back in November, from November to even just December, so in 10 days, we went from $80,000 to $95,000 in 10 days. And in 2 months, we went from $80,000 to $98,000, looking like a breakout in bullish momentum before the Greenlander FUD that happened there. So, I think things can move quickly. We've seen it move quickly to the downside. It'll be nice to see it move quickly to the upside, but we haven't seen that in quite a bit. Really, ever since the 10/10 liquidity crisis, we've had no meaningful follow-through to the upside. We've had months of sideways to higher. It looks like we're going good. We're grinding higher. We're up $10,000, $15,000 in Bitcoin. And then by then, the next event happened, and everything sells off again. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what kind of momentum we can get. But, more and more nation states keep buying, mining, and holding Bitcoin. And here's another one. The UAE has mined 450 million worth of Bitcoin at current price. Most of this Bitcoin is being held for the long term here. Now, will they sell it at any point in the future? Sure. But they are kind of creating a government strategic reserve, probably based on the mining profitability, where they're paying off the cost of the miners and then hoarding the rest of that Bitcoin. Obviously, the amount of Bitcoin they can hoard increases with the price of Bitcoin as well. Right now, it's 67,000, probably not all that profitable, but as it gets up to 80, 90, 100, 125,000, once again, more profitability, more Bitcoin held, less Bitcoin sold to the open market. Here you go, UAE getting active in the Bitcoin mining game.
We said this was going to happen in terms of nation-state adoption. We said that smaller countries were going to ultimately jump on board and be sort of leading the pack, and we already saw that with El Salvador, for example. Bhutan, shout out to Bhutan's been mining Bitcoin since 2016 and basically saved their country. Very tiny, poor country, I think adjacent to China or something like that, that was in dire straits and then mined Bitcoin and did well. Now we're seeing the Arabs get into it. Shout out to oil money getting into crypto. And I do think that the Trump family is likely playing a major role in this. I mean, the Trump family and the Arabs, they are tight. They both love money. They both love gold. They both love oil. I'm just kidding around. But no, there's a lot of connection there. And we know the Trump family is deeply behind Bitcoin, has their own mining company. I mean, Eric Trump is out there doing, the media circuit talking about, $1 million Bitcoin is coming. So my guess is he continues to convince similar nation states to jump on board and go all in with Bitcoin and crypto. Arabs are buying with all their oil money, and yet little guy with $1,000 worth of Bitcoins decided to sell, and then it's going to zero. Make it make sense.
We need to get those $1,000 buyers to start buying instead of selling, because then they tell their friends, and a lot of $1,000 buyers together produces a lot of noise and a lot of momentum on the charts. Now, talking about Bitcoin buying and mining, we also have seen Ethereum buying and mining here. Despite Ethereum's volatility and recent price drop, we've seen the biggest accumulation in years, fueled by strong DeFi and TradeFi adoption. Now, I don't get that excited to this because, yes, there is massive accumulation, but it isn't happening from retail. It isn't happening from us. It's happening primarily from Joe Lubin, Sharplink Gaming, BitMiner, and Thomas Lee. And, of course, anybody who is launching stablecoins, they need Ethereum to participate in the generation and holding liquidity provision for their personal stablecoins. So, again, this is really just institutional accumulation, while retail is nowhere to be found. Vitalik Buterin sells a couple $1 million here and there to live, and the foundation keeps cheating away their ETH to fund, who knows, transgender rights march or some gay shit. But, eventually this kind of accumulation on a finite asset, this kind of staking on a finite asset does produce higher prices, and I think that's why we do see Ethereum kind of holding in this 2,000 range while everybody else thinks everything's going to zero. ETH is trying to hold major support levels historically and really needs to break above the 5,000 level before the fireworks really go off. This is, of course, good to see, but I don't think it's that big of a surprise. We've been talking about this for quite a while as we've seen Sharplink Gaming, BitMiner, and these other DATs really accumulating ETH in a big way, yet price continues to meander sideways.
I'm bullish that the institutions are loaded up. I mean, this is how it goes. Every single cycle. When the price is down, retail is nowhere to be found, and the only people bidding are the institutions and the whales and those with long-term time horizons and max conviction. And eventually, at some point, some catalyst, usually a combination of quantitative easing, lower interest rates, higher business cycle, ISM readings. Eventually, those things come into play. Assets start showing green a little bit. And once we get a few months of sustained green, that's when the retail comes back. And that's when, if you look at the ETH chart here, and I'm not exactly zoomed in, but if I'm not mistaken, there was a time, again, this was the 2019 into 2020, where ETH consolidated for a long-ass time between like $200 and $400. And I'm sure it was counted for dead. ETH sucks, blah, 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 blah. Only true believers ever bought then. And then it proceeded to go on like a 20x run during the bull market. Now, I'm not saying ETH is going to do a 20x from where it's at now, but a 10x to $20,000 ETH, if Bitcoin does hit the 200K mark, is completely within the realm of reason. I know it sounds crazy to say now because we've been beaten down and we're so bearish and everyone's like, there's no way it'll ever go higher. Trust me, guys, I was there in 2019 into 2020. In fact, most of the ETH I still have was purchased at those levels. Bull runs can happen, guys. They do happen, and they will happen again. Just hang in there.
Sub-$100 ETH back then, huh?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Lived through some crazy times. I like to tell this story. Had been buying ETH all the way up to like $1,400 during the, let's call it the 2017 run-up. And then 2018 hits, bear market hits, and my $1,400 ETH, the value evaporates to $90 ETH. So you guys think you've lived through some shit? You guys think, oh, Bitcoin's down 50%, I can't handle it. Bro, you ain't seen shit. But the good news is I bought a lot more around 200 and $200 ETH. And now don't really have to work. Can just talk to you guys on podcasts. So, patience, conviction, long-term time horizon, things tend to work out.
With the ETH accumulation, you'd think there'd be some kind of altcoin green candles, and in fact, there has been. This is huge. Alt season 2026 might have already begun. The Alt to Bitcoin just printed its first sustained green MACD for 2 consecutive months with fresh bullish crossover. For the first time in 5.8 years, the last time we saw this, altcoin market cap expanded roughly 1,000 to 1,500% over the following cycle. The last time this happened is when Network literally went from $1,000 investment to $100,000. We saw Bondly do 100x. We saw a bunch of these do massive gains. High-end leaders did 10 to 100x during the peak rotation. We're looking at the most constructive alt signal in over 5 years. We're all going to make it. It doesn't feel good. The altcoins you have probably haven't moved. New altcoin launches aren't doing good either, but you got to start somewhere. And this is where you get involved, and you can see those green candles rapidly turn into massive gains. Because remember, if you buy something now and it gets only to a fraction of its previous high, you're probably only, you're looking at 200% gains already because things have sold off so hard. So what do you think now for altcoins that already exist, altcoins that are about to launch, or altcoins that just launched? Does this timing remind you of anything that we've seen success with in the past?
Oh, man, I'm so excited for this signal to have been triggered. It's giving me 2019, 2020 vibes once again, man. And absolutely, there's maximum opportunity right now because if you are looking at new coins, shout out to Pools, by the way. Get involved in Pools if you want to get into risk-free IDOs, refundable IDOs.
Pools up 42% since we got involved with them just a couple weeks ago, by the way. So while everything else is red, Pools is up 42%.
Good job, Pools. Good job, us. So you want to get into new projects. That's a tremendous opportunity there, which I'll explain. Or maybe you want to also get into some established projects that have proper fundamentals and proper utility, good community, good team. Now, the challenge with older altcoins is, there's always a bias for newness in crypto and in life. Oh, the new restaurant just opened up down the block. Got to check it out. I'm all excited. Meanwhile, the one that's been there for 10 years, I've been there, done that. Fuck that. I don't want to go to that restaurant. Is the bias for newness is a thing, guys. So, for my money, better probably to find new projects that are on very sweet bear market kind of token economics, bear market opportunities. By the way, we are working on one through Pools, very promising new project where seed investors are going to get tremendous benefits in terms of passive income opportunity. Kind of reminds me, I don't know if any of our viewers were around a couple of years ago for the Dead Prez project, which was an online casino, right? And we were the first seed. We were the seed investors. Our group, our private group, they needed like 50K, and they gave us a sweetheart deal, like incredible deal because they needed the money. Great thing about the bear market. And dude, that was 100x. That was actually 100x that happened 2 years ago for us. I'm getting those vibes again for certain new projects that are giving great sweetheart, bear market, investor-friendly deals. So we got one coming for the Crypto Paradise DAO, also Pools Council. Probably going to be going on the Pools Launchpad. We got to get the deal signed, but it's a very promising project. And yeah, man, if that signal's legit, we could be looking at a 100x season again here pretty soon.
And what helps that signal? That signal helps if we get massive interest rate cuts, both in short-term and long-term interest rates, because that puts more money in the pocket of retail investors or potential investors. Car loans go down, mortgage payments go down. everything goes down when short and long-term interest rates go down. And we've been talking about how we see that inflation is much lower than the government sees. We've been following along with Trueflation, who we just happened to be advisors for their launch of their project as well, and did very well at the start. The token now isn't all that great, but it's being talked about the platform by Anthony Papagliano and all these people on CNBC. And we always talked about, hey, we think their data is accurate, and there's usually a 45-day lag. Well, now there's been an actual study of the data, and there's a 30-day lag. And due to this 30-day lag, they believe that all of a sudden the Fed is going to see, holy shit, we were wrong about inflation. It is actually plummeting, and we need to fight, deflation with massive interest rate cuts. Here we go, Anthony Papagliano. Trueflation is the #1 predictor for what will happen to CPI within the next few months. There is a 97% correlation between Trueflation and CPI with a 1-month lag, according here to Mark. The government's inflation data is about to plummet to 1%. Maybe people will start to listen then. I don't know if the government data will actually plummet to 1% because the government data is not as good as Trueflation. But I've been on the record saying there is a 45-day lag, and when Trueflation has been showing a decrease in inflation like nobody else has, well, what do you know? The government data slowly but surely was beating expectations on the way down, now in the 2s. But Trueflation has shown a massive cliff drop off in the past month here, with inflation as low as 0.9% to 1.2%. And do you believe that the government will see this data, that the Fed will panic, and the Fed will have to catch up and cut interest rates, even though right now there's only a 7% chance of a cut here in the next 26 days?
I am starting to come around to that theory for a few reasons. One, the data is going to show that inflation is way down. The big driver is actually going to be shelter costs. Shout out to Donald Trump for deporting a lot of people who had been, bidding up the price of rentals in your neighborhood and neighborhoods around the country. Those folks are leaving, and so shelter costs are going down. That is going to show up in the official data. I don't know if it shows up prior to the next meeting. But regardless, with the change of the guard now coming with Kevin Warsh, I think there is going to be a mindset shift at the Fed that we may see even in advance of Warsh being nominated and coming in May. So 7% feels highly, let's just call it a bad bet. Because I think we're looking at more like a 50% chance. I think it's an absolute toss-up at this point in time. And you add to the fact, too, the labor market, the million job downward revision over the last 12 months. They got to be looking at that, too, and saying, oh, boy. Labor market not looking too hot. And inflation's under control. Maybe we just do the 25 basis point cut, even though we hate Trump. We just got to do it anyway.
Yeah, and it is kind of crazy. The 7% is after almost a double up because it was a 4% and it jumped to 7 over the past few days with some of the information that we're seeing. So we'll see how it plays out. But again, we've been talking about how Trueflation has been accurate and been a leading indicator for inflation. So far, that has been proved correct. And now the correlation percentage has come out to 97%. But I think even their numbers are a little wild. They're showing sub 1% inflation. If the government sees anything around 2%, you think the interest rates got to be cut. And that's what we need. That's what we've been talking about. That helps spur liquidity. That helps spur ISM growth. That helps spurs Bitcoin and Ethereum price go higher. So let's see what's happening. I don't want to wait to May for the new Fed chair. I don't want to wait till April for the Clarity Act. It's seemingly looking like that's going to be the case. I want Clarity Act by end of March. And I want some more interest rate cuts before we get the new Fed chair in power.
Well, here's a path back to bullishness. With a little dose of hopium for you guys. First, we need Trump, Khomeini, the supreme leader of Iran, to come to some kind of agreement. I'm not even sure what they're arguing about. We already destroyed most of their nuclear capabilities. But anyway, come to some kind of agreement and basically just remove the threat of war. Sadly, it doesn't look like it's going in that direction, which is really effed up in my opinion, because again, what are we trying to achieve? Can someone explain it to me? Not you, Nick, but Donald Trump. I mean, dude, if you're going to go to war with Iran, you better have a damn good reason, bro. It can't just be, oh, they didn't listen to us when we told them this, that, the other thing. You better have a damn good reason. It better be like they were about to fire off a nuke, and we had to stop it. But that's not the situation. So I don't know what the hell they're doing there. So get that whole thing, that whole mess resolved, back the F off, get a deal in place, whatever, get the Iran situation done. Okay, so that's step one. As soon as that happens, we get a little bit of green in the markets, people feeling a little breath, take a deep breath, oil price will go down, we'll be feeling better. Second step, we need confirmation that the Clarity Act is definitely getting passed. We need it to be leaked out from the internal parties, Brian Armstrong, Jamie Dimon, etc., the senators, to be like, this thing's done and dusted, baby. We did it. We did it. We're good. It's getting passed. It's going to be sent to the president's desk in the next week. You get that, boom, big green candles. Then the third thing you need, as we're sniffing some hopium, this is the third bit of hopium we need. The Fed to get their head up out of their ass and to, let's just say, give us a jumbo cut. Let's just give it a 50 basis point cut. Because, damn, wow, deflation is really, deflation's a concern now. AI really is driving the cost of everything down much more than we thought. Jobs are a big concern. We got it wrong, and we got to do a big pivot here. If we get those three things, bro, we are back above 100K quick.
Yeah, and I think there's a probability of those all three happening is growing by the day. I mean, we've been looking for all three of those things. We thought all three of those would become a reality. We're some of the first to talk about it, and slowly but surely it looks like it will be a reality. It's just now a timing thing. When does it happen? Part of the reason that we've seen this downturn is, yes, there's been some black swan events. You had the 10-10 liquidity crisis. You got some foot in the markets. But we have seen gold and Ethereum show strength. We've seen stock market show strength. It's the macros that the crypto market really needs have been kind of delayed. A lot of people thought that maybe we would have that in January for the Clarity Act. Maybe after seeing 3 interest rate cuts, those interest rate cuts would still continue to happen because all the inflation data and the job numbers were saying we needed a continuation of cuts. And then what Powell do in the last meeting? Oh, let's hold those pat. He was dovish, at least, not hawkish, but he was kind of hawkish while the other interest rate cuts were happening instead of dovish. So a lot of the macros seemingly are going to happen and will continue to happen. It's just the timing has continued to be delayed. And during moments of FUD and delayed for bullish macros for risk-on assets, including Bitcoin and ETH, well, prices have continued to slide because the 4-year cyclists believe that they were correct, and they are selling out of positions. They're taking profits or they're giving up down here at the lows. So that's kind of why we stand where we are. But it is interesting to see the Sharpe ratio at the lows here, which indicates usually bear market bottoms when we're only down 50% off the all-time high, because historically it's been between 85 to 95%. So could we see the decreasing volatility to the downside and the upside for Bitcoin? You're near the top of the S-curve here for Bitcoin. That would be a good thing and indicate that shorter bear market seasons could lead to quicker highs, because we kind of need that, because we never saw that for Ethereum or altcoins in this previous cycle that we just completed.
It's been a challenging last 6 months. Let's just be honest about it. I do feel like the bottom has either already been hit or it's about to be hit. Or we're much closer to the bottom, and we're much closer to a reversal than we are to further downside. Obviously, the caveat to that would be what happens with the Iran situation. But even if we do strike Iran, they're not going to hit back, first of all. The worst that they can do is fire a bunch of missiles at Israel, which we already have proven that can be intercepted. And even if there's minor casualties there, they just kind of accept that that's the cost of doing business and, whatever. So that would be I think, one of these very short-lived, similar to, when we hit them last time, was that last April? We hit them with the bunker buster. Remember that?
It's
we
been
destroyed.
a while, huh?
That was last April. We hit the Fordo's site or something like that, where they had held a bunch of nukes, and Iran did retaliate, shooting missiles off at, I think, our carriers and Israel. Few casualties, no American casualties, and it was the quickest non-war, other than the non-war that we just had with Venezuela. So Does that happen again in a worst case scenario? We absolutely cannot have boots on the ground in Iran. I don't think we should be going for regime change, in my opinion anyway. Assassinating world leaders half a world away for what benefit is unclear. So I don't know. I hope the people around Trump are telling him to, dude, it's okay to be a little dovish at times. You don't have to always just hit him, hit him, hit him, hit him, hit him, and hit him. Sometimes you can actually be a nice guy and still have that threat of I'm gonna hit you if you do something real bad, but I'm not gonna just hit you out of the blue for no reason.
Yeah, and the last thing I want to end on here is we were talking about how many times have we seen these consecutive months for Bitcoin. So I did some searching, and here this tweet popped up here for you guys. Bitcoin is plotting its 5th consecutive red candle for the 2nd time in history. The first time we saw 6 consecutive red candles was 2018 to 2019. After that, Bitcoin printed 5 consecutive green candles with a 4x pump, 3 of which gained more than 25%. So, you know, we've talked about Crypto Amaru said this felt like the longest period of consecutive red candles. Well, it is the 2nd time this has happened, so he's correct there. But he also said he's getting very much 2019 vibes, and this is the first time we saw this consecutive red candle since 2018 to 2019. So, kind of 2019 vibes. When this ended, what happened? Well, you saw massive green candles for Bitcoin, a 4x in price, Ethereum surging to new all-time highs, and altcoins going bananas. So will history repeat itself? Do you need one more red candle in March and then you get the Clarity Act and things turn green? Or is February going to be the last red candle for the 2nd time in history of Bitcoin? We're talking about how your assumption that this had to be a history-breaking moment is correct, and also the assumption that you're having very much 2019 vibes. Well, the last time this happened was in 2018 to 2019 before Bitcoin went on a 4x run, Ethereum went to highs, and altcoins absolutely produced massive wealth.
Yeah, man, 2019 vibes. Look, you know, is history guaranteed to repeat itself? No, of course not. But there are similar sort of macro setups happening. When you look at how QT ended in 2019, but QE didn't start until early 2020 in March, as a matter of fact. The black swan that hit with COVID, we just had a black swan you could argue with. I don't know, we had a number of black swans you could say affecting Bitcoin now. I don't know, man. I don't know. But I always go back to this. 3 choices if you're in these markets. Buy if you have dry powder. Hold if you're a G with balls of steel. Or sell if you're a little G who doesn't believe in this asset class. Those are the 3 choices at any given time, guys. And my take is, as painful as it is, I don't think you can sell now at these lows. I really don't. Unless you need the money. And look, I may have to sell some random underperforming alts here to pay some bills off pretty soon, and it's going to suck. But, you know, my core holdings, Bitcoin, ETH, even my Solana, I'm going to hodl that. Surf, yeah, no, I'm never selling Surf. That's a given. I mean, if it hit 100 million market cap, sure, then probably would, but not at 100,000 market cap. But I got some like PLS has just been sitting there for like 5-6 months, and it's just like, all right, I got to pay bills somehow. But anyway, outside of that, I think you just got to hold here, man, because what's the greater probability in the next, say, 3 months? We're down further, and it's just like more red and more doom and gloom and more we're fucked, and we got to wait even longer? Or is it greater probability we finally bounced after 5 months of red?
Well, history would tell you that the higher probability is that you bounce. The longest red consecutive months in the history of Bitcoin was 6. That was back in 2018, 2019, before a massive 4x in alt season. And right now we're at 5 months of February closes with the perception that we're going to get an interest rate cut here sooner than later. We're going to get Clarity Act here sooner than later. You're going to get tax refunds sooner than later. You're going to get a tariff rebate check sooner than later. And inflation has fallen off a cliff. So my guess would be the probabilities, and history tells you that, hey, maybe one more red month of Bitcoin. But even 5 months has only happened one other time in history, and it was followed by massive sustainable green candles, which gets retail to FOMO at a time when institutions weren't even involved. We have not seen retail FOMO
The problem is at this moment in time, the market is just risk off. Between what's going on with the potential war with Iran, between the fact that no one really knows what the Fed is going to do, weirdly enough. What is Kevin Warsh going to ultimately do? Because he's been hawkish at times. He's come out previously at times, not all the time, but certain times, and said he's anti-QE. Which version of Kevin Warsh are we going to get? But my guess is it all ends up working out. My guess is we do not go to war with Iran, or if we do, it ends up being some very short-lived, essentially nothing burger. My guess is we actually do get either a cut or a very dovish, press conference out of Powell in March. And my guess is Kevin Warsh comes in and he works hand in hand with Scott Bessent, the Secretary of Treasury, on their new, quote, accord that they've gone out and been talking about, where the Fed and the Treasury together work to drive down long-term rates to make, housing affordable again, to make life affordable again, and to bring on, the glorious growth that the Republicans need in order to not get crushed in November. So have some faith, ladies and gentlemen. I know it's hard. I know it's not easy. We've been getting crushed and beaten upside the head and just killed and ridiculed, and certain friends are reaching out to me. What happened to Bitcoin? What happened to Bitcoin, bro? It's like, dude, we've lived through this 100 times. The same thing that's happened 100 times before is happening now, which is we're in a bear market. The only question you ask yourself is, what's more likely? Break down further from here and another many, many months of winter? Or stars align, catalysts come to fruition, and we start to rip and roar back up?
Also, what happened to Bitcoin told you we're in a bear market crowd. Here's you zoomed out from 2015. I mean, it looks like the bear markets are getting, less extreme. Bull markets are dampering out. We didn't have really an alt season this time around, but we could still make some gains. And you're getting macros that are saying a low and Bitcoin is in. So right when they're asking what's happening to Bitcoin, zoom out. Okay, you don't want to zoom out from 2015? How about the 2019 or low? That wasn't that long ago. Oh, you don't want to zoom out that far? How about 2023 when I told you to buy the dip on Bitcoin when you're shitting down your leg? I mean, if you look at this chart, it sure seems like we're still a lot higher. All right, how about in 2024 when I said a Bitcoin spot ETF was coming? Well, you're even still in the gains somehow there. I don't know how, because apparently Bitcoin is doom and gloom at zero, underperforming every single asset. But if you zoom out, this still looks like up and to the right for Bitcoin to me. Yeah, it's not fun right here, right now. Not when you were looking at it 115,000, decided not to buy it, and now you think you're a genius. But on any other time scale, up and to the right has been the trend. And it looks like, based on Sharpe ratio, interest rate cuts, upcoming midterm elections, Clarity Act, whatever you want to look at, institutional demand, that we're going to be up and to the right sooner than rather later once again. And hopefully the 4-year cyclists are incorrect and we don't go into a multi-year winter in which Bitcoin goes to 40,000 and we can hold somewhere here in the 60s, reverse, and make those people reevaluate whether the 4-year cycle is even a thing.
I always appreciate when you pull up a long-term chart like this, Nick, because it does remind you that given enough time, Bitcoin is still the best performing asset class of the past 10 years, right? So, for all those who are doom and gloom, I'm sad, I'm upset, price down, just zoom out, guys, and think long term. Think, where is the price going to be in 10 years from now? I just had this conversation. I met up with a bunch of my Wall Street friends. We had a dinner for a buddy of ours, and we're talking about Bitcoin, crypto, this and that. Like, how do you deal with volatility, this and that? And I just told them, look, man, I treat my Bitcoin and my ETH no different than I treat my 401k and my S&P 500 investments. I'm not checking them every day. I'm not looking to buy and sell every day. I'm not looking to trade in and out of my, long-term, basically retirement portfolio. Now, caveat to that is I have my altcoin bags and my risk on, speculative investments, which we haven't made too many of recently, but they will come back at some point. That's a different story. Okay, you can trade those in and out, fine. But even the fact that my main portfolio is down literally 50%, that's a big number, guys. It's down 50% from where it was in October. I ain't worried because I wasn't thinking about selling my main portfolio now anyway. I don't know when I'm going to sell it, but it wasn't going to be now because I don't need the money. Just hodl on to it like you do your 401k and everything else. So we're going to be fine, guys. We are going to be fine. Just hang in there. And perhaps this, Google search, maybe this is the bottom signal we needed.
Search interest for Bitcoin going to zero is now higher than it was in 2022, which was probably the FTX debacle. So, this is interesting. The first comment here. It's funny to watch how people join the negativity with ease and how hard it is to be optimistic. That doesn't apply to only Bitcoin or even all financial assets. It's really life in general. Business, entrepreneurship, something your buddy's doing, something he wants to go back to school. Everybody is rife with pessimism, hopping on the bandwagon of negativity when there's perception of failure. But you need to surround yourself with the people or the belief system in which there is optimism. The people rooting for you, okay, go for it. I'm here to support. How can I get involved? Is there an opportunity for me to make money like I have with my buddy who moved his roofing company here? I'm not a fucking roofer. I don't know much about fucking roofing, but I can sell a fucking ice cube to an Eskimo. And he needed somebody who can help sell roofs and talk to clients about the system and when it's going to be done because he's not organized. So there's opportunities around you. Be optimistic for others. See if you can help in the success of others. Same thing applies to Crypto Paradise. When Crypto Armor's like, hey, I want to do something new. This didn't go right, but let's try Crypto Paradise. This is what I see can happen. I'm here doing daily live shows. We're doing comments in the background with Telegram. We're doing investments. Some are good, some are bad. With the optimism that when there is another alt season, not if, Crypto Paradise can bring a lot of value to its community, can bring a lot of value to our own pockets, can bring a lot of value to the pockets of surf holders via buybacks and burn, can bring value to Pulse Chain and to other projects looking to launch in crypto because we've been here for a long time. So does optimism always lead to instant gratification? No, but I guarantee that pessimism and negativity never leads to gratification because you're never going to be on the opportunity or the right side of history to make those gains. You're always rooting for the downfall of other, and which leads to the downfall of self.
If you're a pessimistic asshole, well, you probably hate our channel. You probably hate us because we are the ultimate optimists, even in the face of everything seemingly going wrong. And who knows, maybe it's delusional, maybe it's crazy, maybe it flies in the face of reality. But I will tell you this, as having been a perma bull about this industry, about my own abilities to do things, not that I'm an expert in everything by any stretch, but just the ability to surround myself with good people, right? And ultimately capitalize when the time is right. That's what's gotten me here today. That's what I think every investor needs. You need to believe in the power of the markets, power of compounding, power of timing, luck. But you ain't going to get there if you're bearish all the time. If you're a bearish person, the first sign of stress or challenge, you will likely give up and then start poo-pooing and rooting against the thing that you used to like. And that is the crazy thing about Bitcoin. How quickly sentiment can shift even among those who purportedly were long-term bullish on the asset. I mean, it's sad really to see, God, how many people I've worked with over the years in crypto, invested in projects with over the years in crypto. I'd say 90% are gone. That's sad. And I get it. There's a lot of scams and manipulation, and we've lost money, plenty of money. over the past year. So it ain't easy. But giving up, man, just not in my DNA. So if you guys are watching the channel, first of all, give a like, share, subscribe, tell a friend. If you guys are optimistic, I want to see you retweet the space. I want to see some comments. I want to see some positivity. We got to do this together. We got to stay optimistic together.
I think that's about all we got today. We got to hit the telegrams, get going on some other things, and hope when you come back that there's a little bit green on that screen.
We need green. We need green. I just saw, by the way, that Donald Trump is hosting the first meeting of like the Peace Council, which is the council he put together to, I guess, reconstruct Gaza and bring peace to the Middle East or whatever. And if you're sitting and hosting a meeting about peace in the Middle East, how is it that you're also potentially going to war in the Middle East? So hopefully this whole blustering and, encircling Iran with a bunch of warships and threatening them. And by the way, I'm sure the threats are going both ways. Both sides should cut it out. But hopefully this just ends real soon. Because I'm telling you, man, as soon as dude, he turns around a couple warships, hey, deal struck. We're friends again. Not that we were ever really friends, but, we don't hate each other. They stopped chanting death to America for a day. Peace has prevailed. Dude, that's when we get the green coming back. Then we get a rate cut. Then we get Kevin Warsh coming in, ultra dovish, more rate cuts. Then we get the stimulus checks from the tariffs, rebates. Then we get the tax refunds coming in, which are apparently in the thousands and thousands of dollars for folks already coming in. A lot of reasons to be bullish. We just got to get that set of facts to line up. And man, 100,000 Bitcoin. It's in striking distance, guys. It really is.
Let's do it. Until next time, I guess we'll see you tomorrow. We'll be live again. Live shows are back. Make sure to start sharing them again. Start tuning in. We got to get in the favor of the algorithm, that's for sure.
Live shows are back, but I have good news for you guys. Actually, not for you guys, for me. I booked another trip to Tulum.
Oh, God.
I know, dude. I'm addicted. I'm looking outside right now. It's dark. Snow still on the ground for a month now. There's not a leaf on the trees. Miserable outside. I take a 3-hour flight. I'm in the sunshine. I'm on the beach. Beautiful women everywhere. I'm doing workouts on the sand. Why would I not go back? I found cheap flights. So, that will happen in April, by the way. But good news. Anyway, for me. Nick, you're invited too, bro. You're invited too. You can come anytime you want, man. You know that.
Yes, of course, of course.
All right, ladies and gents, we're at the hour. Always want to get to the hour. Helps with the algorithm. Appreciate you guys today. We'll be back tomorrow with another stream. And until then, see you on the beach.